Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. And yes, this is Todd Durkin, and you're in for a real treat today as we're going to be talking about raising empowered athletes. For all you parents out there, I get so much feedback every time we address the parenting topic about how you want me to go deeper and deeper on that. We've got parents of all ages, kids that are just starting school. We have parents who have kids in middle school, high school, college, and beyond. So we're going to be diving in there today with a new friend of mine. But before I do that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for all of your love, your DMs. Lately, with the last several podcasts, y'all have just been lighting that up. And thank you for the shares on your Instagram and Facebook and your DMs that you've been writing in on. I've had several people text me back on our community. I just want to invite you, if you are not yet part of my text community, please join it. It's completely free. I am the one behind that text. I'll give you the number. Text me up any of your questions, and I'd love to address any of your topics or questions on future episodes. That text number, 619-304-2216, 619-304-2216. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes as well. But your words mean the world to me. And every single day I'm getting something from someone of you listeners here in our impact community that means so much. And when I look at it, now I want to say thank you for sharing your heart and your soul with me. One recently came in, I cried my eyes out listening to the episode. I haven't felt as down as I have been, and listening to your episode pulled me out of a pit and made my soul smile. Thank you. I needed that. That was just an example of a recent one I just read off the text, so thank you. As a matter of fact, today when we're talking with Kirsten Jones, let me tell you what, I'm smiling right now if you're watching on YouTube, because Kirsten is a fellow William & Mary alum. She actually graduated in the same year as I did, and she has 3 children, but she was a standout volleyball player. I did not know her because she transferred in at a time when transferring wasn't normal like it is today. We'll actually talk about that because I give her grief for not either going to the football games or hanging out at the fraternity that I was in, which I talk about. Yes, yeah, you're getting all that in today's show. So that she gets her proper introduction. Check this out. Kirsten played Division I volleyball at William & Mary and is a member of the 2018 class of the College of William & Mary's Hall of Fame. She worked for over 14 years for the global sporting goods giant Nike as a footwear executive, both in Europe and at their world headquarters in Oregon. She's currently a motivational speaker, writer, and peak performance coach who works with both teen and pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and business leaders. You can see her on the stage at the Winning Summit or Women's Empowerment Symposium at the Rose Bowl Institute. She's the co-host of the Raising Athletes podcast with Kirsten Jones and Susie Walton, where they interview coaches, athletes, trainers, and industry experts about everything youth sports. She's a contributing author, Winning Mindset, Elite Strategies for Peak Performance, current bestseller on Amazon, and her new book, Raising Empowered Athletes, just came out a few months ago from Triumph Books. So congratulations, Kirsten, on your new book, Raising Empowered Athletes. Kirsten and her husband, Evan, currently raising 3 teenage and young adult athletes, age 22, 19, 17 in Los Angeles. She writes about the challenge of raising not only strong athletes, but extraordinary people as a guest expert on websites, including grownandflown.com and I love to watch you play.com. Guys, you're in for a real treat today as Kirsten and I chop it up on the Impact Show on all things raising empowered athletes. We're talking parenting. We're talking the crazy athletic times that we live in. We're talking about life. We're talking about even the old good tribe pride at William & Mary. Without further ado, let's go to the show and Kirsten Jones. Kirsten Jones, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me, Todd. This has been something we've been waiting for a while, so I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. We have a fellow William & Mary alum, same year. Yeah, same graduating year. And as just mentioned, Kirsten is a Hall of Famer, 2018 class of the College of Knowledge, William & Mary's Hall of Fame as a volleyball player. So Kirsten, I am so excited to have you on the show today, and a shout out to our fellow tribe alum, Derek Cox, who connected us for the show, because you transferred into William & Mary, and I never got to meet you then because I guess you didn't either A, go to the football games, or B, go to Kappa Sig.
Not enough, apparently.
Right. Right. Well, it's great to have you. And you know, it's interesting all that you are doing. Obviously, you just wrote a book, and I'm excited to talk to you about that here in a few minutes. You have a podcast, Raising Athletes, with Susie Walton, that's reaching a lot of kids and parents and athletes of all ages. So so much to talk about. But before we do that, I guess got to talk about William & Mary for a moment, because my heart is shining today talking about Tribe Pride. You spent what, 2 years, the last 2 years at William & Mary?
That's correct. Yeah, I grew up in Montana, and then I played at San Diego State I redshirted my first year and played 2 years at San Diego State. And then it really wasn't working out the way I thought it would, which happens a lot in life. And so I pivoted. And I was lucky enough to have Debbie Hill, the coach then, who's still very involved in the program, reach out to me. And I landed there and had the most amazing 2 years. It's so exciting to be a part of that family. And I'm so proud of my experience there.
Yeah, no, I remember Debbie Hill. And matter of fact, if you're watching on YouTube, I got the Tribe Pride helmet right here. I should wear it throughout the old episode here. But hey, a shout out to your teammate, Jen Petrie, who is the head volleyball coach here at the University of San Diego. And she has created quite a legacy herself here. I don't know, she's been coaching for how many years, with multiple championships, All-Americans, and quite a career she has created as well. She's a teammate of yours as well.
Yeah, she was the outside hitter. I was the setter. Ironically, I'm taller than she is, but she could jump out of the gym, and I was left-handed. So we were a good combination. And yeah, she's gone on to create an incredible program that went to the Final Four last year, and multiple All-Americans. And it's so fun to watch her do her thing.
So what was your favorite memory at William & Mary?
Oh,
gotcha.
You did. Volleyball or outside of volleyball?
Anything.
Gosh. Ooh. Okay, so we did go down and play Florida State, and we beat them in 5. And it was just one of those moments when you're the underdog. Ironically, we did go out and play San Diego State as well, and that would have been the best icing on the cake if we could have beat them, having transferred away from there. But we lost to them in 5. But it was great. That was a great volleyball memory. And then in general, though, what I love about Williamsburg was climbing the wall and, doing dog street runs, and of course cheese shop and all of those normal things. But the culture and the history there is what makes it such a special place. Yeah. I love the culture and the history.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the people, this day, right? It's interesting, the time we live in now, you alluded to it, and I want to dive into it in a moment here about even recruiting and the transfer game, and that I remember, in the early 90s, the teammates and classmates that I met there, it was always about the people. To this day, a lot of the coaches and administrators, and obviously my fellow teammates, we're still really close. And I love going back to Williamsburg and seeing those people. William & Mary is a special place, and it's the people that always make the place, and obviously a great environment. But, the experiences we have starting from high school and then through college and then post-college, heck, I'm still involved in so many different alumni type events. So I'm excited for you and the path and journey you're on. And obviously with your new book that you recently put out, it's really exciting. Raising Empowered Athletes, a youth sports parenting guide for raising happy, brave, and resilient kids. I do want to dive into that. in a second here. Derek Cox connected us. Those of you that don't know Derek has trained at Fitness Quest 10 for a long time, was a business intern many moons ago. How did you and Derek, who is a also Hall of Famer at William & Mary, and then had an illustrious career in the NFL, how did you guys connect, Kirsten?
So out of William & Mary with my East Asian Studies and Japanese degree, I moved to Eastern Europe.
What?
Yes, which my parents, of course, were
No
doing,
wonder why I didn't know you at William & Mary. I one of those smart people.
I was in the wrong building.
I was never hanging out in the places you were hanging out.
I was at the Greenleaf occasionally.
Oh, man.
I ended up going to Eastern Europe because I didn't want to go back to Japan. I studied in Japan for a while, but decided being 6 feet tall and blonde, it wasn't going to work out for me. So I went to Eastern Europe instead. Ended up meeting a cute guy in an Irish pub who happened to be from Eugene, Oregon, and he was over there playing pro basketball. And I said, "What's your dream job?" And he said, "Well, I want to work for Nike." I said, "Me too." He goes, "I grew up in Eugene. I got to work for Nike." And I found out that they had an office in Vienna, Austria, which was a 2-hour train ride away. I jumped on the next train, and they hired me. And I worked for Nike in Vienna, Stockholm, Amsterdam, ultimately at World Headquarters. And while I was at World Headquarters, I was in touch with somebody I know a friend of mine who was a Kappa at William & Mary. And she said, "Why don't you come speak to the MBAs?" So I came out and spoke while I was still at Nike, and Derek was in the audience. And he reached out afterwards and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I love what you do. I love what you're about." His journey then took him to the NFL. And then 7 years later, he reached out and said, "I don't know if you remember me, but I'm trying to figure out what's next. Would you help me pivot?" So that was when he became a client. And I've had him on my podcast. You can check him out on Raising Athletes. And what I loved, I think that the biggest thing that he said that resonated so well was, he said, "My parents allowed me to figure out where I wanted to be." And he goes, "It was the smartest thing they did, because it wasn't if, but when things got hard, as they all do." He's like, the shine is off of the penny once you go through the fall season and, freshman year gets hard. He's like, all my buddies were like, "Well, I didn't want to be here anyway," or "I had a better offer over there." And they were all looking to pivot. And I call my mom and she'd say, "That was your choice. You need to figure it out." And he goes, "It was such great advice, because she was so right. Then I had to own my stuff." And he goes, "That's how I ended up getting an unranked, unrecruited, undrafted kid from a small 1AA school, gets into the NFL. It's through that mindset."
I know. DC's an awesome man. I'm glad that he connected us and Kirsten. So much to talk about. I want to dive in because the era we live in now, it's one I've actually toyed with going deeper on, because you have the NIL, you have transfer portal all over the place. In many ways, it has been a blessing, and in some ways, it's been a curse. But it's the wild, wild west. And again, I've toyed with the idea of having a few episodes on just that topic, because I do have some feelings on it. It is a different era that we live in compared to the 80s, the 90s, and obviously before that. In your book, you actually frame up how things used to be. And for all you parents who are in your 40s, 50s, or older, you used to go out and play, and every different season is a different sport. I mean, for me, I was a football, basketball, baseball, and it wasn't specializing in being a quarterback year round. And that now, obviously, youth sports, $20 billion industry. You have your specialized quarterback coach or hitting coach or running coach. And heck, I'm immersed in this like many of our listeners are, but I have an interesting take on it all. And I love in your book that you address it. Can you please just frame up the evolution and the change that's happened to where we are today in a world that's predominated in a much different era of NIL and the transfer portal and all this stuff now versus then? Can you frame that up, please, Kirsten?
Yeah. So in the 40s and 50s, maybe I think about 24% of women worked outside of the home. By the 70s and 80s, that number doubled. Almost 50% of women are now working outside of the home. Simultaneously, the late 70s, you have something horrible happen, and John Adam Walsh gets abducted and killed. 38 million people tune into their TV to hear it's a really scary world out there. It's not safe to allow our kids to go out on the street and play until dark because mom and dad aren't home. They're both working. The
Mm.
kids just can't, even though that was a misnomer. And in fact, that wasn't factual at all, but we're talking pre-internet and pre any of that. It became the forefront and center about the world is a very scary place. At the same time, in 1983, the National Commission on Excellence comes out with a study that says we're a nation at risk. Our kids are getting stupider and stupider. They're falling behind the rest of the world. We're no longer going to be the leaders from an academic standpoint. So you have this kind of perfect storm of, we have more money, but we don't have enough time. And we want our kids to be at the forefront of everything. So all of a sudden we have the resources to okay, well, let's put a group together. Maybe dad can coach it, right? So we start going away from just YMCA or rec ball, and we start forming these teams, and we start having these opportunities for the parents to start leading the coaching versus the kids to figure out the rules and how it works and Lord of the Flies on the playground. Then you add ESPN comes online in 1979. Now I can turn on my TV and I can see Tiger Woods and Nadia Comaneci and Andre Agassi. And I can see in the early 70s, Anders Anderson comes out with this amazing study that says, if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you too can raise a prodigy. So there was no, I think it's the frog in the pot. There was no light bulb moment. I think it's been this slow build of parents going, oh, I have more money. Oh, my husband has time to go coach or step in and help. Oh, we need to help them. We need to be directive. And now they're not self-directed at all. Now we're controlling. And in the last even 15 years, you've seen that escalate where literally my joke was, the reason I wrote this book is you used to come out of the living room, everybody, or you go into the living room, everybody's like, what to expect when you're expecting. You're so happy as a parent because you're sure I'm going to be the best parent ever. But then flash forward 4 years, you get to kick and chase and you got some yahoo standing next to you going, well, you're not going to do this rec thing, are you? We're doing club. And by 7 or 8, we're going to Sweden because we can't find talent just here in local LA. We got to go somewhere international. All of a sudden, it's just escalated to now what we have is professionalization of youth sports. Yeah. It's happening at lower and lower levels.
Hey, Dion might be right. Dion said recently, it's all about the bag. It's all about the money. And when you actually track it back, people actually mocked him at first, was like, yeah. But look at what's going on with all the different conference realignment. You're telling me that it's good for student athletes to be traveling from Oregon or the West Coast to Rutgers and Michigan? Oh, for football is easy, by the way. Football, I'm a football guy. Football's got it easy. You have 5 away games a year. 5, okay? Maybe 6. But you're telling me for the field hockey, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, you're going to get on a plane. Oh, here I go. Now I'm getting fired up. 6 hours to go to have a match or a long weekend and then get in the plane 6 hours. And it's good for the student athlete and the mental health. He's right. He's right. Is it good or bad? And it trickles down to
parents come in the gym and say, hey,
I want little Johnny or Mary to train with you 5 days a week so that they could, get a college scholarship or make it in the pros as a golfer, tennis player, football player, basketball, whatever the sport, you name it, guys or gals. And it's where are we at? Where are we at? And that's the crazy part, Kirsten. And again, I've been like, wow, I watched this. I'm like, what is it about? Is it about the bag? Is it about the money? Or is it truly about, you just said, the play and the enjoyment? Because I don't even know. You shared in here. What's the dropout rate? What's the dropout rate of kids playing? What is it, Kirsten? You shared in the book.
Over 70% of kids are dropping out by age 13.
That's ridiculous.
Why? Because we're not having any fun. Why? Because the parents have taken it over and we're controlling it. And now I have clients, like a little 10-year-old client. She's a surfer. Her mom says, I take her to the skateboarding park, and she looks at her and she goes, I don't know how to do this. And she said, well, why? What's the matter? She goes, well, I've never had a lesson. we're raising these kids in this environment where there's no creativity. There's no, I'm just going to go try this and see what happens. They're so fear-based because we have to be successful at this, because as soon as I do it, I have to be proficient at it or I'm a loser, right? So the mindset of just us trying whatever without expectation of it going anywhere is gone.
I'll never forget this. I've never shared this story before. There was a professor at my time in the kinesiology department. I know you were in the Eastern Studies and Japanese department. I don't even know where that building was, but in the Adair Gymnasium, the kinesiology department, Dr. John Charles, I don't even know how I still remember this, but Dr. Charles, there was a class that was on the history of sport. And I'll never forget, we got into a deep discussion about play, about deriving satisfaction and fulfillment from play and the process of sport and play. And I remember talking about out loud in this discussion of probably 20 people in the class about lifting weights and practicing your sport and how it's good. It's fun. You enjoy the play aspect of sport. Now, I think of, even as parents, for all of you parents who have high school kids or kids playing in college or even pro, sometimes it's miserable. Miserable. Can I get an amen? Anyone out there that you think it should be the best time of your life and you're worried about Johnny or Mary, whatever, or the coaches or the admin or this or that, all the politics that happen. And you're like, wait, this is supposed to be fun? It's miserable. It's miserable. And what have we created? It's gotten away from what Dr. Charles has said. And I remember sitting in that thinking, man, so what's the answer, Kirsten? Or is there not an answer? It's the state of where we're at. And somehow with a 70% drop rate at age 13 because of the lack of joy, fulfillment, and happiness of playing a sport, which is gotten so darn competitive. Is there an answer? What is the answer?
So first of all, I'm very familiar with Adair. That's where the volleyball team lived, with no air conditioning, above the swimming pool, in 90-degree heat with 115% humidity, all through August, right? With no air conditioning. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was awesome. I have a story in the book, so let me indulge me in a short story. But a family that I know, when we were living in Carlsbad, actually, I'm sitting on the bench watching my 9-year-old play basketball, and every parent is going crazy on the sidelines. And there's one dad sitting next to me, leaning back, doing one of these, just barely paying attention. And so finally I said to him, what's going on here? He goes, 5th kid. I'm like, So tell me. He said, well, the first kid is a great golfer, age 5. Took him to the driving range. Eventually the pro comes over. Wow, he's really good. You should get him lessons. You should get him, because next thing I know, we got him on the junior tour. Next thing I know, he's 10 years old. We're taking every family vacation to go to every single golf event around the country. He loved it. We loved it. He said, we had the best time. We hit the lottery. Stanford comes calling. He gets a full ride to Stanford to play golf.
Wow.
We are like thrilled. 3 months before he's supposed to leave for Stanford, he comes to my wife and I and he says, I'm never golfing again.
Wow.
And I'm not going to Stanford.
Wow.
And he said, we were gutted because we were just we thought we were following the breadcrumbs. And so what I say to parents is, as you're going through this process, what might be the dream for either or both of you? First of all, I say it's got to be their dream. But even if it's their dream at 5 or 8 or 12, you've got to keep checking in, and you've got to give them, it's got to be intrinsically driven. The most successful athletes we know are the ones that would play regardless of whether there was an audience or not. We play regardless of whether they made $1 or not. They just love it so much. And that's what we're getting separated from, is the kids are really good. In fact, they're really good. They're better in high school than we were in college. But do they love it? Would they do it regardless? Or are they just so now trained to do it that they do it because now out of obligation and not out of passion? So when they're young, for parents who are listening, if you're on kids under 13, you should be focusing on 3 things: friends, fun, and fundamentals. Is your coach giving them the tools that they need to learn and grow the game? I saw a great quote the other day, which was, a coach's metric should be, by the end of the season, if the kid signs up for the sport the next season because they want to, that's how you know you won. Not because you won the medal, not because you got the trophy. And unfortunately, it's all been inverted. Now all the clubs, you got to win because you got to attract the next talent, and because you got to get more money, because so it's all following the bag, even now at youth sports level.
Yep.
Because that's what's going to bring the new clients in, the new parents in, because, ooh, we want to go play for the best, because it's all about that, because junior is going to be the next XYZ. We need to get him in early or we're going to be behind.
So good. I recently heard a quote that relates to that in some ways about the power of a coach. And many times as a coach, you don't know the impact you've had on a young man or woman until 10 or 15 years later. And if they invite you to their wedding or not, right? Like,
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
that man or woman made an impact on me. He or she is the kind of person I want at my wedding, versus just the wins and the losses, or whatever it may be in the situation, or helping you navigate through a difficult, challenging time in your life, right? Today, we live in a very competitive world. Take out sport. Like, business is competitive. The world is competitive. And every child is wired different. Like, I have 3 kids, they're all wired different. You have 3 children, they're all wired different. Those of you with kids who play sports, all the kids, same parents, wired different. Some would argue this is a good thing, that sports is really competitive, and some would argue not. You spoke about the college cheating scandal in the book. What does that have to do with youth sports and also competition?
So when my middle son was in the 1st grade, we had just moved. Actually, this is Carlsbad story as well. We had just moved into the neighborhood. I didn't know anybody, so I signed up to do the picnic for the 1st grade class. And I show up at the Panera for the meeting, and all the moms are talking. Did you do the book report? Do you have the book report done? Yes, I have it done. And I'm thinking, we were supposed to do a book report for the meeting? They're like, no. The 1st grade teacher, she said the book report's due on Friday, and I haven't finished mine. And I thought, what in the heck is going on? Why would the mom have done the book report? So I go home and ask my son. He's like, yeah, I guess so. And I was like, have you read the book yet? No, not yet. It's like, okay, well, let me know if you need any help. Flash forward a couple weeks, I'm in the women's classroom, the 1st grade classroom, and all the bookmobiles are hanging from the ceiling. And I'm standing in front of my son's, which is like, got crayon and half spelled words and globs of glue coming off of it. And she comes over and she smiles and she says, some people don't think I can tell who did the work. And we're looking at the perfectly spaced 12 font, perfectly typed, no spelling errors book report. What's happening is parents at kindergarten and 1st grade are taking over, because what if my kid fails? What if he doesn't get an A on that book report? That's going to then, it's going to start escalating. If he's doing C work and that's what he wants to do, unless he gets the lesson from the C work and decides to do something about it, he's not going to be able to do A work down the road. P.S. That same son, 8 years later, comes home, same thing. Science report, so-and-so's mom did the whole science report for her. And we don't stop. We keep taking over. The college cheating scandal is exactly the same thing. It's the parent's ego saying, this makes me look bad. What if my kid doesn't get into this school? That's a reflection on me. And the answer is, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with you.
Preach.
It's all about empowering your child to learn from their mistakes. If they're not supposed to get into X brand school, that's okay. And maybe he would be, or she would be happier at the school that they were qualified to get into. But most of those kids that you interviewed didn't even want to go to that school anyway, right? But mom or dad wanted to go to that school and didn't get in, or mom or dad thought that was going to be the only answer. But allowing our kids to fail, to not swoop in, be helicopter, drone, steamroll, whatever you pick your metaphor, parent, but sit back and say, oh, gosh, that sucked. What are you going to do about it?
Mm,
How do you want to handle this going forward?
mm. So good. So good. Talk more about it, failure, because it sounds so good, Kirsten, when you're talking about it. But when you have a child that's failing, I don't care if it's youth sports, middle school, high school, college, pro, you hate to see your child fail. But in some ways, it's good, right? I mean, when they're facing a difficult time, not that we want to see our kids fail, but we also know that looking back on our own lives, our most valuable lessons probably came when we failed or were challenged or had to go through adversity. And we know that, but we want to, quote, protect our kids because we love our kids and all these things. Talk more about it, because it's really hard as a parent to see your kids struggle, because what do all of us parents want? We want to have our kids have a better life than we had growing up. So we try to save them, right? We try to save our kids. Talk a little bit more about that, because it's not easy to do.
We're living between social media and expectations that society says, in order to be happy, you have to have this. In order to be happy, you have to get here.
Mm.
And the honest perception that it's all about perfection. So a lot of the clients I deal with, the parents come to me and they're like, you know, she can't get a B, she can't not play, she can't not start, she's always been the best. What happens when she gets in her own way? Progress over perfection.
Mm.
And every great coach, the best coaches we know, I talk about the book in transformational versus transactional coaching, the John Woodens of the world want to take the worst player on the roster and make them the seventh best. And take the fifth player on the roster and make them the third best. But we live in a society where we're only valuing the top three, only the ones that were the valedictorian, only the ones, and that's not how the world works.
Mm.
That's not what we should be valuing. We should be valuing, I don't want you to be the best, parents. This is the word you want to say. I want you to do your best.
Mm.
And when they're giving their best effort, and then the other piece of that is model it, right? What are you going through that's not going well? We've had a couple, it took me 7 years to write this book. I had 50 publishers say, no, thank you. Everybody thought I was trying to write the How to Raise a Pro Athlete book. No, it's actually the antithesis.
Yep.
But sitting at the dinner table and saying, ooh, that sucked. Ooh, they don't want me on. Ooh, that didn't go well. Oh gosh, I got cut here. Allowing them to see, or as my co-host Susie Walton says, if you are a perfect parent, ha ha ha, get off at the wrong exit occasionally. Just make a mistake so that they can learn from that. Because what are they doing? They listen to almost nothing of what we say, but they watch everything we do. So you are also a model to them as to how they can do things. And if they're feeling this pressure, well, I've never seen my mom make a mistake. She's just perfect at everything. Oh gosh, I saw her get fired from that job. I saw her overcome cancer. I saw her or him, have that boss that didn't like him. Like, allow that to be part of your discussions with them, because that's how they'll learn and that's how they'll know they're enough. We all want to know we're enough. That's all we're all here for. This whole thing called life is all about evolution and figuring out I am enough just as I am.
So good. So good. When you were talking about Susie Walton, she's your co-host, right, on your podcast, Raising Athletes. She is also the ex-wife of Bill Walton. She's raised 4 boys herself, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Very successful boys.
Yeah. And you've got 3 kids. She's got 4 kids. Folks, if you want even more on this, and Kirsten, definitely check out that podcast, because they talk about this all the time and they're doing great things. It's interesting as a parent now, again, of 2018 and soon to be 16. It's crazy when you look at parenting, and I deal with a lot of parents as well. Talk a little bit more about parenting now, because here's what I see and sometimes even feel, and you're dead on right. Sometimes as parents, you feel anxiety because they're not experiencing the joy or the success that they want, right? And you know the answers because you've been through it. And it's that constant delicate balance of how much should I interject versus letting them just ride through the storm or the good times and the bad times. And I think as a parent, this is a very pertinent topic. Or am I the only one out there? Right? Like, no. Many of you parents can empathize with it, but talk a bit more, Kirsten, as a parent, as a mom, as a coach, and someone who's studied a lot of your adult life and as a former athlete. What would be a few of the things that you would recommend for parents and for empowered athletes to really say, okay, here are 2 or 3 habits or rituals or almost ethoses to live by to say, hey, this is how you ultimately are going to define and experience more joy and passion in your game and do what you love to do versus have to and all the anxiety that can bring. Talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of my book tour right now, and I'm getting a lot of great questions from parents. And by and large, one of the biggest ones is around that. So this is great in theory, but
yeah,
we play 13 months a year. This is great in theory, but the coach doesn't play my kid, and he's on the bench all the time. You know, like, so I get it. And in all transparency, I've been both. I had 2 kids who were very, very athletic and were one of, you know, the key players on most teams they were on. And I had a kid who was barely on the bench, and I had to get up and take a lap because it's very hard being a former athlete where you're used to always playing, you're used to always being chosen. But to be the good parent is to first assign what or understand what your own values are. And then I say have a family discussion. So what do I stand for? I had a client reach out and say, you know, my kid's behind. And I said, oh, what does that mean? Well, he's not going to make he's not going to make the ones team. And that's where everybody's like, oh, we got to be on the ones team. In order for our kid to be happy, he has to be on the ones team, which is such a crack or whatever, because if they're on the ones team and they never touch the floor, but if they're on the twos team and they play the entire time, which one are they developing? Which one are they going to learn from? They're going to learn different things from both, but figuring out what your own values are. And if it is to go on that camping trip for the month of July next summer and your kids are 10, 5, and 2, do it. Like, there is nothing that's going to go by you because you missed your 832nd soccer tournament in the 100-degree heat. You know, eventually genetics catches up with us all. So no matter how many coaches you pay for, no how many tournaments they play in, there will be a determining factor that's beyond any of us, but you only get 18 summers with them. And then they go off. I know you just sent one off to college too. I just dropped mine off, second one off at college. And saying goodbye to them, knowing, yes, they're going to go on this next exciting chapter, but the chapters that we had together, you were there to help them when they had it not go well. And you framed it up back to them. Oh gosh, that didn't go well. Now what do you want to do? How do you want to handle it? Versus us jumping in, telling them how we're going to handle it. We're going to go to the next club. We're going to go to the next school. We're going to have a story in there. One kid went to 4 different high schools in 2 different states in 4 years. And then when he got to college, shocker, also transferred before he got done. So what are you teaching them? Yeah, when things get hard, bail. And again, I was a transfer, so I'm not saying there's never an opportunity to do that. But what I am saying is, parents, look at what are your values as you're going through these phases and decide. You know, some may say, nope, we're doing travel this, and we're not going to have any holidays. We're not going to have Thanksgiving together. We don't care. We're all in. But I think when we look back on parenting, we're going to assess it a lot differently and say, wow, we never did do that camping trip, and now the kids are gone. We should have done that, or we never did the family holiday. So making sure you're looking at it through your own values, and like I said, checking in with the kids to make sure they're getting what they need.
Yeah. Guys, Kirsten Jones is talking right now about her book, Raising Empowered Athletes. And when I was reading through the book, and Kirsten, thank you for sending it down, I kind of chuckled at first I'm like, it should say raising empowered parents, right? Like, I was like, okay, maybe that's your sequel book, by the way. Because here's the bottom line is, parents, if we're not empowered enough, then how are we supposed to put that into our kids and instill confidence, belief, courage, mindset into our children? Because if we are taking our expectations and priorities and putting that, even unrealistic expectations for our children, and putting that on them, the stress that causes us and them is not good. It's not healthy. So it's something that, heck, society today deals with. And this is real. And I hate to see how many kids are quitting. I hate when I read those stats that are in the book about the number of kids who are dropping out or not participating in any sport. Oh, I don't want to play JV. I'm a varsity player. What are you talking about? Like, to your point, go play the game and have some fun. Or if you're on the B team, work your way up. Or, hey, sometimes you do have to change. Sometimes things, you will transfer on that. But it's under the auspices as an empowered young man or woman or adult or parent is, hey, here are the credos we live by, and let's make sure that we derive satisfaction in the sport, because last I checked, most people aren't going to go on and have a 20-year career in the pros. And even if you do, fantastic, but everyone's got something anyway. So it's like, man, pick your poison, right? Let's have some fun doing this stuff and enjoy it. And let's get the incredible values that we get out of sport, learning how to compete, learning how the process about, working out and preparation and making sure you watch film, depending on what level you're at, and teamwork and collaboration and sportsmanship and all these things that we can get out of sport, that we can continue to do that. So I laugh when I first was there. I'm like, man, they should be raising empowered parents as well as athletes. So I got your second book for you when you're ready. But I know you're on the book tour, and you want to check Kirsten out, get her book. Where can they get the book, Kirsten?
Well, if you go onto my website, kirstenjonesinc.com, you'll find the podcast, #RaisingAthletes, and you'll find all of my speaking gigs where I'm coming. You can jump on. I've got some fun free tools in there that you can download, some of the things around overwhelm and recruiting and all the different things that I speak about. But to your point about helping them and helping, I say, you need to put on your own mask first. And when we set the tone for our kids as to how we're doing life, that allows them to play free. And when we're so tightly wound, they just read off of our stress. And the ones that I see, and you work with pro athletes too, the pro athletes are so interesting to me, are ones that played at a very high level, because they're the ones that are leaning back the furthest with their kids. They're like, oh, if they want to do it, they'll do it. If they don't, they won't. But it's the ones that they didn't play themselves, so they don't understand. So they're gripping the bat so hard that it's sucking the fun out. And what we know is whether you're active or not by age 23 will determine your level of activity the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, and the habits that we form now. So even, again, it's not about the trophy. It's about, what are the habits? Are you meditating? Are you reading the Bible? Are you listening to good music? Are you journaling every morning? Do you have a morning ritual? I work with my clients on rituals, right? What are those peak performance habits we're putting in place now? And if somebody walks away from a session from me and says, oh my gosh, I don't remember what you said. I don't even remember what sport I was playing, but I took this toolbox with me that has made me successful for life. That's my dream.
Folks, can you see why I like Kirsten? Did you hear that? Did you hear what you just talked about? Those habits, routines, and rituals that when you do these things, how they can positively impact your experience in anything. Whether it's sport, band, acting, it's activity. Here we're talking sport, but it doesn't matter. It's really in deriving that enjoyment out of what activity it is. So definitely pick her book up, listen to her podcast, Raising Athletes, and you're going to get more of this. Talk to me real quick as we get ready to end today. Just what's next? What's next, Kirsten, in the world of sport? We are in an interesting time, right?
Mhm.
You got social media. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad. It's got its good and its bad. It's got evil in it. It's a blessing and a curse. Man, what's the answer to all this? What's
Mhm.
obviously, you share a lot in the book, but just from your heart, what would you advise a young athlete or even a parent to do at this very interesting time we live in the world of sport?
It's so hard because we're all trying to keep up with the Joneses, whoever
Mm,
they are, right? And that's made us all crazy and overwhelmed and frustrated. And I was just actually at a LA 28. The Olympics is coming here in 2028 to LA, and was invited to this talk. And the head of the Olympics, Kathy Carter, who happens to be a William and Mary alum as well, was talking about they've already invested $300,000 back into the city of Los Angeles for rec sports, because what's happened is everything is pay to play and people can't afford it. And what we're doing is we're missing out on a lot of opportunities to play, to have fun. So yes, if I could wave a magic wand, I would say we got to get off this hamster wheel of everything being pay to play. Now it's why we have not only kindergarten, but TK, PK, and why we put them in kick and chase at 3, because we don't want to be behind at 8 or 9. There isn't an easy answer. You're absolutely right. It is a crazy world, but we can vote with our dollars and with, as parents in smaller communities. And I do see this as I'm traveling around. There are places like, there's just in Buffalo where we lived for a few years. And one of my son's teammates played basketball, baseball, and volleyball all the way through high school. He played 1 season of travel baseball. He just got drafted by the Rangers, right? He didn't spend every single moment, every single summer doing all of those things. It is possible if that's your dream anyway. But parents, really, don't you want to raise just a good human? Like that's, I think, where we're getting lost is we're so focused on what the outcome's going to be that we're missing the opportunity to create lasting bond relationships that they're going to want to come see us when we're in the old people's home, right?
no doubt. And I appreciate the real talk because this is a difficult topic. And I often think about, as an athlete myself and now as a parent, if I could give wisdom to my younger self, what would it be? Right? If I could talk to that high school kid or that college kid, what would it be? And to those whom I coach, one of the things I always say is, don't be so concerned with what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
I spent way too much time, Kirsten, even when I was at college, thinking about what are they going to think back, in New Jersey. And obviously, I was at Virginia. Like, what are they going to think if I'm not the starter or if I don't win the job? Like, so much dumb worry and stress about what other people thought versus, man, I'm working my butt off. And whatever happens, happens. And you know what? I love it. Or and now it's worse because of social media, right? So, and I wish I didn't care as much what I'd be. Hey, to this day, sometimes I
Me
wish
too.
I didn't care
Me
as
too.
much because I'll look at every darn text, DM, message that comes in, and 98% of them are good. And it'll be like someone that says, oh, like whatever. I'm like, I wish I could just flush it and not worry about it. But sometimes I wish I didn't care as much. Right?
Yeah, same. No, I'm exactly the same. And being an entrepreneur, like that was one of the hardest things for me. It was like now everybody's looking at me. Not I was behind the swoosh for 15 years and that was easy. And now being out on your own.
Yeah.
But parents, one of my biggest tips for that, which is when that's happening to your kid, because they're all on social media, they're consuming. When we're only consuming, we get into our heads and we get into shutdown and we get into worrying about what everybody else thinks. The only control we have is when we're creating. So get out of consumption and get into creation. And the more you can create, and I don't care whether you make a YouTube channel or, I've got 2 of my boys now, they're playing music. They're now doing like getting out of this mode of just sitting and absorbing things. Because even if it's mom, you want to create a new meal every night, or you want to, you want to get I had a woman ask the other day, her son is neurodivergent in sports and doesn't have a team to play on because they don't want him on the team. Go create a little league. I'm sure there are other parents that will raise their hand, but it's going to take us not just saying, okay, whatever you have to feed me, but saying, yeah, no, this is, I want to be a part of creating the future that we all should want to live in, which is one that is, embracing us all. I lost.
Let's see.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Sorry. Yep, I'm back. Okay.
So good. And the other thing I would say, and I got a couple, but the other thing I would say would be this is parents, talk to your kids about things other than sports. Now, listen, I'm guilty as they come on this because, in coaching my kids, especially my oldest, who eats, breathes, and sleeps sports, it was easy to talk football all the time. And I'd have to be very, very conscious of not always talking about football. With my daughter now, who's 15, about to be 16, it's a little bit easier because she wants to play college lacrosse, but she doesn't want to just talk about sports, right? Like, it's almost like, okay, well, even now with my oldest and my middle son, it's, hey, how is school going? What's going on in life? And young kids, make sure you actually ask mom and dad about things other than how to just be good in sports, or if mom and dad are always talking about sports, is, hey, can you give me a couple life tips and wisdom about when you were a kid? What did you learn, or things other than that? Because it's really easy, if like I love sports, to always be talking about sports, and sports aren't life all the time, right? So it's an important aspect on that. And the third thing I'll say is this, is for anyone, if you're going through a tough time as a parent or a kid, training, fitness is part of preparation for sport. But training and fitness, way more important than sport, is part of life. And if you're going through a tough time, if you either got hurt or you got benched or something bad happened, go work out for the pure enjoyment of, you want to work out to get your mind right. Like, I remember literally running Dog Street some days early in my career where I didn't play. I thought I should be playing. I go for runs after the game just to get my mind right. Like, I didn't feel like I got a good workout in the game. So I'm going to go out for my own workout. I'm going to lift afterwards. And I'm just going to try to get my mind right before everyone goes and celebrates a great win. And I would tell that to my kids now, like any other kids I train or listening in, is just use fitness sometimes for the pure enjoyment of, I just want to feel good. Yeah, I want to look better too. That's all good. But man, listen, when you physically go work out, you go for a run, you lift some weights, you feel better. So if you're in a slump, you're in a dump, you're feeling like garbage, parents, kids, athletes, training isn't just for, I want to get better or faster, stronger, more explosive. Yes, it can and will do that. Sometimes just go for a run and leave your watch behind, leave your stuff behind, and just go out and actually turn off the music or whatever, and just listen for the pure enjoyment of, I mean, I want to go for a run and I'm just going to feel good, and it's not about the time. So exercise.
Well, and sorry if I can jump in there, for the entrepreneurs and the coaches that are running their own businesses, that's when the good ideas come too, right? Like when you stop having all the noise around you and you can just hear, like, I got the idea of, I'm going to write a book. Again, it took 7 years. It wasn't like I just blinked my eyes and it happened. It was this idea of, what if I could do something for someone else? What if I had this idea that would help solve this problem? And when you have that idea and it pops in your head and you think, okay, go write it down. And our brains don't know the difference between us thinking about something and us actually having already done it. So you just even writing it down, it's 50% of the way there. So now you don't focus on the how, focus on what and why. Why am I doing it? And what is it I want to do? And when you focus on those two things, the how will eventually appear. how will I get the publisher? How will I make the top team? How will I get the new job? The how is not your job. The what and the why is your job.
Preach.
And the clearer you get on those, it's amazing how these obstacles that we think are in our way, they're not obstacles. They're just little tests to see how much you want it. And then you're like, oh, she really wants it because she stuck with it for all these years, right? And it's not like you're going to win the lottery overnight, but magic, miracles can happen because you're clear on your what and your why.
Kirsten Jones, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for having the persistence to follow through when you got 49 no's and you knew that you were on a mission to help parents and kids be empowered athletes and empowered young men and women. And your book is awesome. And I thank you for writing that. If one wants to follow you, where are the best places they can do that again?
On Instagram at Kirsten Jones Coach. My website is kirstenjonesinc.com, and the podcast is #RaisingAthletes on iTunes and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. But Todd, thank you so much for having me on. I love your work. I admire everything that you do, and it's so fun to find a fellow tribe to partner with, and let's do this.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. It's awesome to connect. And I find that every time we have a discussion on parenting and sports, there's a lot of people in the same boat. They're trying to figure it out, right? Like, you just go encourage your kids, love your kids, win or loss, good or bad, whatever the competition is, just keep encouraging them, because the last I checked, none of us, parents included, have been encouraged enough, praised enough for the hard work that everyone does. Parents, kids, athletes. Let's continue to stay positive in a world that sometimes is crazy. Not seems crazy. Mm-hmm. It is crazy with social media, with all the NIL stuff. And man, I'm gonna need to have a follow-up episode on these different topics, because I have my thoughts on them. But guys, pick up her book, Raising Empowered Athletes, a youth sports parenting guide for raising happy, brave, and resilient kids. Kirsten Jones, you're the best. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Let's do this.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kirsten Jones, the author of Raising Empowered Athletes, a youth sports parenting guide for raising happy, brave, and resilient kids. If you've gotten this far, you're probably a parent, or you're probably an athlete, or maybe you're a coach who wanted the 911 and the 411 on the latest and greatest. And I've been toying with this idea of going deeper and deeper on some of the topics that Kirsten addresses in here, including things like the transfer portal and the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, things that have really changed the landscape of college sport, heck, all of sports in a lot of ways. But I love your feedback. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it on your social media, or share it with someone who you are friends with, colleagues with, or in your family who you believe can benefit. As always, I love adding value to your life, and I say thank you. My heart is full of gratitude for you listening in today. So without further ado, go out there and have an awesome day. And whatever you do, make sure you train hard. You got to eat right, live inspired, and go create impact.